Okay.
Michelle Weekley, Don Bay. We have some true playable characters here. People actually critically think. So you guys were having a discussion, which I honestly don't even know much about. I was uninformed on kind of what's going on here, but we're doing it nonetheless. We're doing it live.
We're going live.
We're doing it
We're
live.
doing it live. You guys take it away here.
Okay. I'm gonna start if you don't mind.
Yeah, you
All
start.
right. So here's how this started. I, of course, was talking trash on FDI, foreign direct investment, which is just pure corruption. And the more that I speak about this, the more that I realize, like, there has to be some caveat for, like, the little, there's always exceptions, right? Dom is doing work at, like, a local level, and ultimately some of the work that he does touches on local economic development. And so we started talking about, like, how that shit gets corrupted, like, the higher you go. So I worked at, like, the peak, like, where nation states are investing in nation states and all the shit surrounding the World Economic Forum. Don understands the structure of all this better, so he can kind of explain how you move up and the corruption increases, which is why at the very top it's the most corrupt. Is that a good, like, intro?
Yeah, I think that's a good intro, and in talking about this, and we talk about this a lot in tons of spaces, this concept of Bitcoiners wanting to avoid entering the political system or engaging in the political system because they'll view it as corrupt and there's corruption there and they don't want to be a part of that. And ultimately, it comes down to local engagement. And we talk about how it's really difficult to affect at a national or global level, but at a local level you can make some real change. And one of the things we talked about the other day was that the two-party political system is less dominant at a local level, and it throttles up as you move to state level politics and then national level politics. And we use the example of running for office. You can run for local office without the endorsement or support of either of the local parties and still win.
This is really important. I think a lot of people don't understand this.
Yeah, and if you think about, your city council, running for city council, you have the ability to engage. Let's say you live in a city of 50,000 people. By raising money, you can get your message across and reach these 50,000 people. Then you go to the state level and you have a district of 2 million people. Now money starts becoming a lot more dominant, and now the parties that have a huge amount of the political money become more dominant in that election. And so you can't just run for state office without the blessing of one of the political parties. Then at the national level, it's even heavier. And so that kind of was like a lot of the gist of our conversation and the importance of changing local politics.
Yeah, because you become beholden. Like, once you cross that threshold that you mentioned where you have to have the approval of the party, that completely changes the incentive, because then they can shut you down. Like, if you have the wrong thought, you have a thought crime, they're going to choose someone else.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
They run like teams. And of course, if you're a part of a political party, there's direction that comes from the party along party lines. It's not just a phrase like voting along party lines or taking a stance along party lines. It's because the party is saying, hey, our expectation is like that you're in this framework.
Yeah.
And, I know a lot of elected folks that are, brilliant, smart, incredible people, but sometimes it's very difficult for them to operate outside of that. And so the importance of injecting, especially with something like Bitcoin, getting to people locally, both in your community and your elected person, because from that local spot, that person has a better chance to overcome that two-party system, gain support, and be able to operate outside of that. Whereas if you look at the presidential election, we're very excited, right? Because there's presidential nominees talking about Bitcoin. But it's like trying to inject yourself. It's almost like sometimes like being like, bro, I'm gonna play pro hockey. Where are you starting? I'm gonna start by trying to get into NHL. And not to say that like RFK is that it's that drastic, but
they shut him out.
yeah, and you would tell you would
did.
tell me, bro, you're not gonna get in the NHL by going. You have to go
start from the bottom.
Start from the bottom.
Yeah.
Your local club, get through the system, college or semi-pro, and then you work. The political system's no different.
Yeah, I think, and BJ and I talked about this earlier on Simply, and then we did some stuff, we just recorded earlier some stuff about, taking political Bitcoin Hour itself into some different avenues, which again, is obviously near and dear to you guys' heart, and you guys have play a part in that. And it's, for like it or not, I think Bitcoiners struggle because we live in two different worlds. We live in a hyper Bitcoinized world, and we live in a fiat world. And for the foreseeable future, we're still gonna have politics, like it or not. And I think that's where you guys are coming from, where it's like, guys, you got to start at this ground level, the locale, because that's the way it was supposed to be. Number one, the way it was best, a decentralized network of political movements. But then we have to understand we are in this bridge. We're crossing this bridge from politics, from fiat, to a world where hopefully it doesn't matter as much. We're still human, going to have politics to some degree still. But I think what you guys are touching on is so huge. Like, your experience obviously at a macro level, your experience at the local level is massive. And that's where, like, I know BJ and I look forward to doing more stuff with you guys, and then a lot of stuff we're, just, like I said, make some promos earlier that we're going to do to build that. Because I know Dennis Porter's got his thing. There's different initiatives going on right now, and the proof of workforce and things of that nature. But there has to be an expansive effort, I think, and really broadening the horizon of what Bitcoiners are doing. Because for as much as the lightning, not the lightning conference, but like the sessions, things like that. At the end of the day, the technical stuff, it doesn't, my mom and dad don't care.
Right.
And my brother and sister don't care. They do not care.
Most people will never understand any of that.
Correct. So I think that's where you guys, what you're doing is huge. And really Bitcoin is starting to understand that and that difference, because it does. It starts at the local level. And then, like you touched on too, the top down, look at BlackRock, for instance. I love for you guys to touch on that too. BlackRock, the kid that was caught on hot mic saying, hey, look, we buy politicians all the time. It's exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, they do.
That's all they do.
That's all that they do. The top down, you're never gonna fix that corruption. But to Dom's point earlier, how at like a really local level, you can have your own views and you can think outside the box, or you can bring something that is maybe not like totally in the party lines. The more people that are doing that, the better, because you're sort of forcing your way up with these different views, right? So, I mean, I've been saying this, like, there's nothing more local than you as a person. And if people speak up and more people in local positions have differing views, we're gonna force ourselves back into a position where we tolerate differing views. Because that's ultimately like what has become the problem, is no one will tolerate differing opinions. And I don't know when it happened that like we all had to agree 100% about everything, but that's not realistic. And I think that's the ultimate tool for the big players like BlackRock, and that is what enables them to very easily buy off anyone they want, because they've manipulated everything to this point where you have one wrong thought and it's a thought crime and you can be canceled. But if we diversify opinions, then they can't manipulate people, because it's like, yeah, that's what I think, and nobody cares. So that's what we need to like force back into politics and culture and our own lives.
Yeah, and look at we talk a lot, like look at the FinCEN, the whole Section 311 stuff, right? So on one hand, like my view on localism and local stuff is not the view of, well, we're not going to fix that, so don't do anything about it and just focus local. I think it's important, I know our buddy Peter has done stuff. Preston Pish, I think, put out a whole thing.
He just put an incredible analysis out of that.
And it's important to engage there.
Yeah.
But you cannot engage at that level if I ask you, what are you doing locally? And the answer is nothing. That we're not going to change anything locally. My city council member can't undo that. They don't have enough power. But my question is your city council member aware of it and against it? Like, if we're not starting there, then really these efforts are kind of like, what we're saying is we're willing to work with what we have, but we're not willing to invest to strengthen that position as we branch out. And so, you know, when these things come up, when people, Bitcoiners, see Senator Warren and they get upset, I will ask, what about in your local community of your local town or city? Are those people in support of what Senator Warren's doing? Do they know about it? If the answer is they don't care, then start there. Start by getting someone locally to run for office that cares. That person will become eventually a state official. And even though it's a lower time preference, like it may take 5-10 years, there will come a time where we're fighting the FinCEN Senator Warren level stuff, but we'll look behind us and go, yo, remember that person we had run for city council? They're now a congressional rep. And you know what? They're not down with this. We have some backup up here. And so that has to happen.
It's so important. It really, this
sorry
is
to bring up
huge.
I know this is just a teaser.
No, this
I've
is
never
really
seen
important
FinCEN.
because he triggered me with FinCEN.
Yeah.
But it is really true because I will say, like, I've been on this rant about this and was really trying to literally just raise awareness because I went out like looking for other people enraged about FinCEN. They're trying to expand their powers to take the Patriot Act and say, okay, it applies.
That was a spicy day on
yeah,
Bitcoin.
Man,
Remember
that was something.
All of us were jumping on stage. That was a day.
And
I'll never forget that day.
I don't know if I started it, but I sent that thing to Peter, and Peter was like, "Get on stage." I like left my office to like go get on Cafe Bitcoin, and nobody knew even that it was happening. And this, it constantly blows my mind as I'll bring something up and people are like, oh, I have no idea. So even if you're just like, even if you can't run for your local politics, go and make sure, like you said, they're aware of the things that are happening and the things that you care about, because the awareness is so much lower even than you think it is. Like, that's important.
Well, and again, you guys have touched on this, but it's the local level. Again, it's so easy to get elected, and if you don't want to get elected and run, that's fine. But making them informed is so much easier, like you mentioned, to have sway in that arena. And like you said, it makes me think of Hillary Clinton. It was like 10 years ago. They were talking about this thing, which again, still many people don't know about it, but civil society 2.0, and it was just basically the bureaucracy funded through FDI, foreign direct investment, all these different initiatives. It's the cultural color revolutions, all these different things they're doing in the background. The State Department, all this apparatus they have built for really a century, and she's laughing. So it was a thing that Glenn Beck had put out like 10 years ago, and it was her laughing at a conference. I think it might have been less than 10 years, but I think it might have been 2015, or they were maybe campaigning, and she was laughing, and she was like, we can not win, we can lose, doesn't matter. They're not. The other side's not going to win anyway because we control all the back end. And it was such a wake-up call to me, and it might have been 10 years, but that was, to me, again, that to a Bitcoiner, someone like, I don't care, it's all right, we're going to take over the system through the money. Yeah, that's fine, but minimizing the collateral damage is something that's always on my mind. Like, why let this go any further than it needs to? And get involved locally. And if only 5% of people or 1% of people did that, just imagine how much change you'd have immediately. That now, 5% of people are involved in their PTA, or 3% of people, and how much that just changes overnight. So anyway, I think that's a really big thing in kind of wrapping here. Any last comments you guys have kind of about this? Like I said, kind of a promo into bigger discussions going forward, and how big, like I was saying to BJ earlier, this is, you think politics is we're going to change it. We got a lot of politics in front of us, a lot, right? We got an election coming up, but into the future, it's going to be huge. So any last comments about this for now? I know we could keep going for hours about this, but any last comments in wrapping here?
I'll start with one and just saying, like, politically and politically speaking, we talked about the kind of hesitation from Bitcoiners, but I believe it's important to defensively be proactive as far as what's going on and playing defense, because in a way, when we talk about local levels and federal levels, we're not necessarily well positioned to play offense because adoption is still moving along and it's picking up. And as it picks up, we will be able to play more offense. But also with Bitcoin, you kind of don't have to play offense. It's not a company. We're not trying to like lobby people. We're just trying to enjoy our system and allow our system to thrive. And so in doing that, being defensive at the federal level, if we're looking at it like chess wise, and then being offensive locally, get engaged locally, you might think it doesn't matter, but it's like the low time preference. It's like saying, oh, I'm not going to get into Bitcoin unless I can buy a whole coin. No. Stack your sats, build your strength. 5 years, 10 years, it's a long game. So there's a lot of good work that can be done. And if you're feeling discouraged, then look like in your most immediate place around you, your neighborhood, your church, your organization, your group. If we can't make progress there, then we're a little bit ahead. You know, we're ahead of where we should be, kind of mounting a defense.
What do I say after that? So I will say, speak up. There's nothing more local than your family, your friends, your own community. And as Brandon said, there's a lot of politics ahead of us, and you cannot be afraid to say what you actually think, because that's local. And even if you're not running for local office or whatever, you've got to be honest with your family and the people in your life. Be honest with yourselves. Do not be afraid especially this coming cycles. Don't be afraid to be honest. You don't have to be rude or aggressive or crazy. Just be honest and rational, and let's bring back like the ability to just have conversations. And I think that is such a big driver of the long term. That has a lot of carry-on effects that people don't realize. So just speak up and speak out.
And in saying that, the perfect segue to my final comment, which is there used to be really only two ways to probably easily vote, which was ammo box and the ballot box. And now we have other ways. We have voting with your feet, voting with your wallet, voting with your voice. You know, things like Nostr, all these decentralized. We're seeing separation of money from state. We're seeing separation of media from state. Never in human history has it been as good as it is right now. Mm-hmm. And that's where we can go back to the dark ages if we don't voice our opinion, if we don't speak out, like you guys are saying. So
let them take over.
Exactly. So those are the 5 ways, really. It's not just those 2 old ways. It's the new ways: the wallet, now our voice, and our feet. So appreciate you guys down Bay, Shell Weekley. To be continued.
TBC.
Exactly.
TBTC.
Exactly. There we go.
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.